and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. OpenSide's newest product, Onto Air Forms, is the Airtable Forms solution that you've been looking for. Visit openside.com to see how it can take your Airtable workflow to the next level. For a limited time, get Onto Air Forms free when you purchase the Onto Air Actions Zapier connector. This week, we welcome Robert DeLanghe, a workflow consultant from Brooklyn, New York. Robert is a polymath whose experiences and interests have spanned the gambit, from the arts to data to design, manufacturing, coding, and more. His academic background is in architecture and sculpture, and when he moved to New York City in 2013, he immersed himself in the maker scene there and specialized in digital fabrication collaborations with artists and designers. Then he worked in production management at Roll & Hill, a luxury lighting design and fabrication studio. This drew him into the world of reporting and data analysis, which he continues to explore in his current pursuits. In his own words, he works better in a state of constant frustration. On screen, Robert gives us a peek under the hood of his awesome rock, paper, scissors game that he built in Airtable. His creation is the winner of Airtable's recent formula contest, and Robert illustrates how he leverages Airtable's forms, formulas, and page designer block, plus his own analytical skill and creativity to construct this delightful diversion. He also gives us a sneak peek into his next game-building project in Airtable, a base that allows you and your friends to play Blackjack. Visit BuiltOnAir.com to sign up for the Built On Air mailing list, where you can get weekly updates on new podcast episodes and other fun Airtable things. Enjoy the show. All right, I can see your screen.
Nice, and I got this kind of pulled over to the side. You'll kind of notice anyone who writes anything in Airtable a lot will always have a text editor.
Yes,
but
it's necessary once you start to dig into some deeper formulas, for sure.
So this is the photo of kind of the base. It looks mostly what you're used to with Airtable, but let me actually I'm going to jump into where it kind of feels a little bit more like magic. So this is a form view where we're kind of used to. I'm just going to go and open that. And this is a public form. So anyone can use it. And it's pretty simple. You just have your one question form. It's a feat of human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. So I get to choose my rock, paper, or scissors. I'm going to choose rock because rocks are stronger, and I think that's going to make me win. I'm just going to hit submit. And now it's loading up a redirect. Normally this would be used to kind of like show someone a splash page or like get them to do something else. But I'm actually using the block shares. And apparently Airtable had the same idea as me. And we actually ended up in a tie game. I can always go back and just rematch. And I can spend hours just playing rock, paper, and scissors. And sometimes I'll find that like it just does the exact same thing as me, which probably means that it's just mimicking me and has come to have the exact same conclusions. But sometimes I'll win. So let's see. Hopefully I win. I did. Okay, so human wins. Rock, paper covers rock. All right, so let's get into kind of how that works. So I'll just close that real quick and go to Airtable. So the main question here is how is Airtable choosing anything? Because making a random choice, it would be super easy if one of the formulas was a rand function. Airtable does not have this ability. So I can kind of see here, this is Airtable's choice. It's really tiny though, so I'm just going to move over to Atom instead. And we got Airtable's move. Okay. So I'm gonna go kind of the middle out. The main thing we want here is what sometimes people will use lots of nested if functions, but a convenient thing to do instead is a switch function.
I love the switch function. Yeah, and that's pretty new, right? I think they came out with it maybe late last year, or
yeah,
I'm not sure, but yeah, the switch function is cool.
It totally changes. So the main thing that's important about a switch function is you need different than an if is every single choice must only happen. I can think of it as a switchboard. Every single choice must only happen once, and for everything going into it, there must be an outcome. So if you're trying to like throw some trash at it, it's going to break. So you can't be like, if this person says this or like this, then that's good. But anything else, you can't throw it through the switch. But it makes it really easy to just kind of list all of our choices. So here we have our first choice: rock, paper, and scissors. That's our like good start for figuring out like what the output's going to be. Now we have to figure out like how it's going to choose. The first thing I did was the old arcade machines. People might be more familiar with. They always play a random game, but the computers back then weren't like, they were just simple circuits. So how did they do it? What normally happened was the computer would load the screen and then they'd start counting when you click start. They'd often use the milliseconds to figure out. Airtable doesn't store milliseconds in their time. That's fine. So we're going to just use the seconds. It doesn't need to be like too accurate. So right here, we're looking at, the first thing is there's two random things you can figure out. The created time you get for every record. And you can use the created time field, but you can also just use the formula created time, which is a little bit easier because then you don't need another column. And then we're only going to look at the seconds. So there's a nice sheet if you want to look at date time format to figure out what kind of things you can pull out. But essentially what we're doing is we're taking a date time and we're pulling a string value out of it. So I want to pull a string value out of it for every second. I'm going to put a mod on it. So just like figure out the remainder, divide it by 3. But if I just try to throw it through the mod, like it throws an error right away. So like what's happening? It's because it's a string. So now I got to convert it back to the value, then put it on the mod. Mm-hmm. And then switch will actually, it allows for strings or numbers as input. And we get out like the rock, paper, scissors. If I just did that, say I went back to my Airtable base, let's actually like quick add a new one. Nuance of auto sort is super important, and I'll tell you why later. Cool. But if I just had that, I would be able to tell exactly what Airtable had. So if I like removed this if statement and just got rid of this real quick, saved it, you would see that I could see that it's paper, and I'd just be like, haha, I'm gonna throw scissors. Good deal, because like it's being hidden in the form view. But I personally like to make sure that I'm not having the ability to cheat. So I'm just going to throw that back on there.
Right. Yes. Us humans, we need to have integrity.
Oh, no, totally. The wanting to cheat is so high. The created time here is still displayed just to make sure that kind of my error handling is good, but it's not displaying the seconds. So it's a little bit harder to cheat. That's great. So now we have Airtable making a decision. Only if I make a decision first, I'm just using that little like single drop down for that. But I need to figure out who wins. And this is kind of a weird function. So I am using a lot of if statements. I'll kind of show you how it works here. A big powerful thing in Airtable is that most of the stuff is shown as strings. And the cool thing is you can do string joins with empty strings. So instead of having like a huge nested if tree, I could do like, if scissors, do this, if paper, then do this, but then I'd have to check for every single one, which would just be huge. So I have like a simple way of kind of doing it. So if it's an if statement here, I can kind of get a little bit bigger too. If human makes a choice, because I don't really care if I don't make a choice, then human equals Airtable. Then tie game, and then I can actually throw this like little new line character in there, which helps later. And then what did the human throw ties whatever Airtable threw, and then you just join it, and then you can keep going. So like if paper and Airtable rock, then like paper rock, and so on and so forth. So for each thing, you only need to have the decision once, which is great. I've played around with like some other ways of dealing with it, but this is a pretty good way to kind of just get all of your choices.
For sure, yeah. Super clean, and instead of a ton of nested if statements, right? Much easier to read.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting with Airtable formulas, there's no formatting guidelines. So you can throw new lines on anything. You can like put commas. I have a kind of my own like idiosyncratic way of formatting things, but the main thing you won't need to do if you're in formulas is have a way for tracking your parentheses.
Yes.
It's huge when you miss one, because Airtable always just throws the same error, like formula didn't work, and it's pretty painful. So that's kind of the ins and outs of how the actual formula is displaying it. But the interesting thing here is that we have an auto sort, and I have a block view. So how did I know that it was my decision that was actually the main one? Let me move this little preview window. So I got this little block view over here, and I can make it bigger. And this is simple. It's just looking at, all it's doing is just displaying the record ID, the key value. And it's using the game results view. So with if it's full screen, it breaks. It's a problem with the desktop version. So let me kind of just make that smaller again. Expanded the record instead. So let's bring that down. So as long as I keep this sorted, it will always show the first record. So as long as I keep this sorted, it will show the last record. So if this table were to get like a lot of action and lots of people were to be choosing at the same time, you wouldn't necessarily get your value. But in this case, only a few people are trying to like take on Airtable at a time. So, yeah,
very cool.
And then still kind of building it up, but there's a rock paper scissors lizard Spock that I've been working on, kind of a Big Bang reference, and I'm trying to make it a little bit more diverse, so you can kind of like play around and add whatever emojis you want. But yeah.
Very cool. I love this. How did you even come up with the idea to, like, were you just messing around and you're like, you know what, I want to see if I can do rock, paper, scissors, or how did this inspiration come to you?
Yeah. So the first thing that kind of happened was on the community forums, there's a lot of people asking for how they can create random IDs for like their inventory and management. Doing like sequential, if you like start enabling your parts like sequential, there's like two issues. One is anyone who like sees your amount of parts, they can tell how many parts you have. Right. They can also see if it's a new part or an old part by its number. So you might like want to have random ones, or you might want to put a random value on something for some other reason. And I was like, well, there's no real way to do random. So like, you hook it up to Zapier, you have Zapier, like do a rand function, you would like a code snippet or some other kind of way. But that's kind of one. It's expensive. People got to set stuff up, but also it doesn't really show what you can actually do with Airtable. So I was like, there's two things I got. I got the time and I got the record ID. Let's figure out, can I do it? And what's like the easiest, lightest thing I can do? And I often do rock, paper, scissors. I have a little Slack bot in my Slack channel that also, you can throw a rock, paper, scissors, and the way that the Slack bots work, it randomly throws an option. So I can see if I win or not anytime if I get bored. And I also like taught Siri how to play rock, paper, scissors. It's just like a fun thing to kind of toy around with, because what I found is often when you're dealing with like larger things that are like have practical applications, there's a lot of unknown outcomes. But if it's a game, it's really easy to kind of wrap your head around like what should happen or shouldn't happen. So you could imagine assigning tasks to an individual instead for a ticketing system with a random function, but maybe your random function is wrong and like someone never gets tickets.
Right.
That would be really hard to tell when you have like 26 different people handling it. But if you have like 3, you can see what happens incorrectly. So I was playing this game for a while, and I was like, paper cover scissors. Like it just kept happening, and I was like, paper doesn't cover scissors. Like, and I realized that I had a typo, and I was able to fix it, which is great. And it's also just fun. And like I kind of was also like, oh man, I could maybe do some join tables and do some like cool stuff. And I was like, man, I'll just like put myself at one table, figure it out. And yeah, I had no idea it would actually work when I started, and it did. But.
Right. Yeah. But it is a cool sort of like thought experiment, like you said, because it is like the rules of the game are really easy to understand, right? So all you're doing is just checking to make sure that you've, told Airtable what to do correctly, instead of, like you mentioned, not totally knowing the rules of the game. Like in the case of a ticketing system where you have 50 people, like how can you evaluate success or not, because it's so complex. So this is so cool. And you also mentioned that you're working on a Blackjack game too, right?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick. Be able to see everything just briefly, but okay. So let's just go to start with the magic. So download gallery. I moved it so it would be more convenient. Okay. So again, I'm taking advantage of the block feature. Page Designer is like something that people like kind of always want. There's like this idea of having reports, and it's something I wasn't familiar with as well. So like I really wanted to like, how could I use it? So in this case, I've kind of gone overboard, but I've made this kind of blackjack player. So you have your name of your person, you have whether or not you're standing, and then the name of the play, and your player name, and then your bet, and then the player hand, and then the dealer hand. This is something that often annoys me, is like when you naming your fields can be really hard when you're like pulling it in later, especially if you're doing like workflow and you're like using Zapier or something, like accidentally throwing something into the wrong area and then you're like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
So this would not be what I would consider a good naming scheme. But anyways, we're going to add another record. So right when we add a record, this whole new record view comes up, and I have like something I need to do. So it's like I got to add a player, because I can't just like bet 50 if I don't like add a player.
Right.
It's a high stakes table. It's $50. So I have me and I have my dog, and like just for fun, we have a little emoji on it. My win percentage is only 50. He's doing much better than me. So I'm just going to play as him because he's probably got more money. So we'll see now that like the bank is up here. Like it's pretty much like classic, like flash screen, for like playing cards. And we'll see it also the center now tells me the next action I need to do. So I need a deal. There is some like kind of nuanced rules in this. So okay. So I just realized I'm out of cards. So that's actually the most important part. Shuffles. So I have this shuffle here, and you're like, that's probably the most important part about like playing a random like game is how do you actually shuffle a deck of cards.
Right.
It's a little tricky. So here, instead of using time, I'm using the record ID. And you'll see that first here, I have a custom field type. This is just my dictionary. It's like an empty dictionary. Something that can be really helpful is if you're used to like Python or JavaScript or like any coding languages, basically any data scheme is just text. So if you know how that text works, you can kind of do some more advanced stuff in Airtable by, either making a list or making a dictionary or making an object. And you can kind of do some manipulation through that. So right here, I'm just having my dictionary, and it's just a string. It's going to go down every single thing. This way, I don't have to refer to it in the formula later. Mm-hmm. So I got the shuffle, and the shuffle's kind of crazy. So first, I'll just start scrolling down. There's going to be like an insane amount of substitutes. That is me removing all of the dictionary values. And then you'll see eventually that I'm doing this. I'm referring to the dictionary, and then I'm using a mid function for the record ID. So the record ID, I can pull up. It's probably just hidden right here. No, I didn't have one. Let's just make it real fast. The record ID is the other one that's like random.
Right, besides the time.
It's not numeric. It's an alpha numeric uppercase, lowercase game. And what I'm doing is I'm just deciding that in the shuffle, that basically if you were to make a bunch of stacks of cards and you were to like put a Post-it down, so it was like, this is the big A, this is the big B, whatever, just like start putting cards into those piles and then just put all the piles together. And it's not, I was trying to do the math to try to figure out like how many like possible shufflings are there, how random are they, and like it's a lot. But the amount of like actual card shufflings is such that like if you shuffle a deck of cards, it's probably never been shuffled in that way in not only all of history, but like if like it was shuffled for every second of like the universe's existence, it would still not be it like I think 5 times over or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Some crazy amount of uniqueness for sure.
So I don't need Airtable to really make that many different shufflings. But yeah, so then we're using the record ID with the mid, and then we're going to replace the record ID and the colon with the value we're on. So we're at 0.3, we're at 0.4, then we're at 0.5, and like those are just the first card in the deck, the second card in the deck, the third, and so on and so forth. And then we just, because we're only replacing the value, the dictionary value, and the colon, it's actually inserting it to the front of the list and just kind of pushing those other ones over. The issue that we run into is eventually we add a crazy amount of commas. When we can get rid of it, it's just like to smash, like get rid of the commas over and over and over again. But yeah, and I think it does a left to take off the last comma. So I had to get that count right, how many characters it would be. When I first did this, I didn't have it be 0.1, and it like caused huge issues. Anyways, now we have we'll see that there's no cards associated with our shuffle. So this is basically a full deck. Now we need to like kind of like pre-deal out these cards so that we can refer to them later. And for the sake of this, I think I'm just going to break a few things. Maybe, I'll actually do it right. I don't want the gallery view. and I don't want the unlinked view. So we'll see all the cards here, and they're associated with the bets. So this is where like kind of the back end is, and each record itself is actually a little card emoticon, not an emoji. There's like a card, dice, and chess piece. There's like emoticons back from like the ASCII days that haven't existed. So I have 208 cards, and I need to add 52. So 208 plus 52. Oh, 260. Yeah. I'm just going to add 260 cards. I don't need to actually add all of those right now because we're just going to have a short game. So I'm just going to add a few. Close that. You notice each time I flip it, there's a card, but it's face down. That's because the card hasn't been chosen yet.
Nice.
Fun way to do like a little bit of air handling.
Right, yeah.
And, okay. So I just added a few cards. Now I just have to add the shuffle. So this is shuffle number 5. And we're just going to copy that. We're going to put it down. In order to do multiple shufflings, the auto numbers in this thing need to like be perfect, can't be touched. And it uses mod to kind of like figure out if it's like now the first card in the deck or not. This is actually, it's got a few like weird stuff in it to like figure out if it's the top card or not the top card. I don't really care about that. I want to play the game. Well, notice it's gone away. It's gone away because I've walked away from the table, and I made a way of like clearing it out. So that way you don't have a bunch of like, because I need to be able to like clear out this view. All right. So he just lost his money because he walked away.
Tolstoy got distracted by a treat or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to add to the view, and there's a few new tools that have been added from Airtable on the recent. One is like there's this idea of like auto sort, then there's this idea of kind of limited views. So I'm using a limit to view, and because our shuffle is all linked to these cards, I can tell what the top card is, and I'm only going to deal out the top card. So I'm just going to add a card. You'll see that it's face down. It's face down not just because it's air handling, but also if it's not linked to a record, it won't show the card. There's some weird things to think about with trying to like cyclical airs. This seems like it's a cyclical air. It's not, which can be difficult. You get really far and then you're like, oh wait, this thing's like a snake eating its own tail. So I'm just going to click that. You can see it's a jack of spades, and the dealer has a 7. I need a second card, and you'll see that now I have the option of hitting or not. It's 13, so I'm going to hit. I had to add like these help fields and stuff too, because you can obviously guess if you looked at the record ID for this, you can see the value of the card. So if I was adding the card to the dealer, you'd be like, oh, he's got an 8, like, which isn't so great. So I got 23, so I busted and the dealer won. So I'm gonna play again. And when I play again, it's auto sorted. So should reload. There, I don't know why it hasn't gone away yet. This should go away. It's supposed to go away when it wins. I'll have to fix the thing, but this time I'm gonna bet on my own.
Cool.
And yeah, it's great. It's kind of there's a bunch of like minutia and kind of figuring these out. What was the most fun was trying to figure out this kind of like center deal or hit thing, because like obviously Airtable can't figure it out. So like what are you gonna like what are you gonna like do to kind of like guide the person to go through it?
Right. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. The main reason I did this thing wasn't actually it's really great to play blackjack, but because we talked about like the idea of like, what is your data? What is your information? And there's like a common thing when people are talking where like there's a book and a book has many chapters. So you have like your books and then you have like your chapters linked and then you connect to the text of the chapter. And then your book might have multiple authors, so like you're talking about like your different tables. So like trying to do that same thing and like what is a game of blackjack? It was like pretty hard because like we have our deck, but we need to have a shuffle, and then each shuffle needs to have like a card, and like each thing needs to have a play, and like then I had the players because it was the only way to also like keep track of betting is to have like at least one player, and everyone starts with 1,000. But yeah, it's fun to do when you don't really have a report or something you're trying to create, but like you have like some sort of function. So I think
yeah, this is all like you're saying. It's really kind of just understanding, the relation. Like, what are the components of blackjack, right? Like, what might the tables be? Like, what do I need to kind of get Airtable to calculate versus what input do I need to get it, and how do I show that to people in a way that seems human enough to prompt them. This is so cool. And it's such, like you mentioned, it's such sort of a great way, right, to kind of think creatively about formulas and how to generate sort of pseudo randomness, right, within the confines of Airtable. And then also the concept, right, of blackjack or rock, paper, scissors is so easy to understand that, even if you don't totally know what's wrong with your formula, right, or how to build something, you can at least really easily like see like, did this do what I want or did it not?
Yeah. So no, totally. I mean,
this is so creative and cool. I love it.
I had a request for someone who had a meal plan and they were trying to just figure out like a random schedule for it, like what could happen. And like, the way to do it is to always like have like a large list of things that were randomized, like go to random.com, get your list, dump it, and then slowly scroll through it. And to like be able to like shuffle things around, like it's like this is for cards and like that's great, but like it's also like you can use it for pretty much anything. It's pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of just this basis, right, that you can use to solve all other kinds of problems that are more complex. The meal plan selection, the ticketing system, things that aren't just as frivolous, I guess, as a game of blackjack, but it's that same sort of build philosophy underlying it. Well, thank you so much for showing us this, and congratulations on winning the Airtable formula contest with your rock, paper, scissors. And before we sign off, let everyone know where can they go online to find you or more of your work.
So I'm pretty active on the Airtable community forums. It's my first and initial and my last name from a user, but you probably come across me. I'll be posting like a public view for anyone to play rock, paper, scissors on there too. And another good spot is my website. Right now it's kind of all of my like digital fabrication stuff, but I'm going to be updating it with more of my data analysis and Airtable and workflow consulting.
Very cool.
And that's robertdelanghe.com.
Cool. We'll include that in the show notes, as well as a link to your Airtable community account so people can check out all of the cool projects that you've been creating.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you so much, Robert. It was great chatting with you. And we'll be on the lookout for more cool, weird Airtable games we can play.
I think Tic-Tac-Toe is next.
Nice.
Try to figure that out. But.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Robert.
All right, thanks.